Emotional content is filmed on Whadjuk Noongar land. This podcast acknowledges the traditional owners and custodians of country. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Come for the stories, stay for the connection. I'm your host, Amy Jane Brand, and this is your weekly dose of emotional content. Hey my loves, future AJ here. I just wanted to jump in and mention that I've been somewhat nervous about putting this episode out. But with all the recent attention on cyberbullying, thanks to Indy Clinton's incredible work, if you don't know about this, you have to go and check out her page. Indy hired a PI to investigate the anonymous trolls that have spent years relentlessly bullying her and her family online. Now, I don't want anyone to get my words twisted. This episode isn't actually about anonymous trolls on the internet, and I recorded this episode a few weeks before it even came out. Instead, I'm talking about my own experience in the influencer industry, the tensions between influencers, and talking shit in private between friends, along with the things I've done in relationships. However, the intention remains the same. Accountability matters. Majority of influencers and creators aren't prepared to own up to their own shit. And this is exactly what I've chosen to do today in this episode by being vulnerable and transparent. After leaving the internet for 2 years due to the same type of bullying that Indy Clinton and so many other creators have endured from anonymous accounts, I'm in full support of what she's doing and will be recording an episode unpacking all of it this week. Okay, thank you for hearing me out with this. Now let's get back into the episode. Today's episode is one that you will either find extremely refreshing and relatable, or you'll find it a little bit shocking. I'm discussing all the times that I found myself being toxic, talking about all the toxic shit that I've done in the past, owning my own mistakes, as well as how I've wronged people and myself in the process. Basically, I'll be airing out my own dirty laundry on the internet. Make sure you stick around to the end of the episode because I'll be taking you through all of my own personal toxicity in relationships, friendships, and career. Look, we all love telling stories where we were wronged, how we were personally hurt in situations and reflecting back on that. But rarely do we ever take accountability and discuss our own fuck-ups. Sometimes we are the ones that hurt somebody else, misunderstand a situation, or show up badly. I've spent the last 7 months of this podcast talking to you about all different things that have happened in my life. And I have taken accountability along the way, but I also feel that it's important that I do an episode dedicated on the things that I have done wrong as well. I feel like it's only fair to talk about my own fuck-ups too. This is not an episode for self-bashing or self-loathing. It is merely a reflection of my own behaviours over the years, especially when I was younger. And I feel like true vulnerability only comes when you look at things from both ways. When I was planning this episode, I realised that nobody really wants to talk about their own toxicity and lean into the mistakes that they have made, especially influencers and creators online. Over the years, I've noticed that most people in this industry naturally want to paint themselves in the perfect light. I can put my hand up and say that I was one of those people. I was very concerned about making sure I always looked a certain way, whether it was physically or about my own personality as well. And quite frankly, it's not only exhausting, but terribly unrealistic. People seem to forget that even the nicest humans with the best intentions fuck up, and that's life. It's all about growing and learning. So in true emotional content fashion, let's dive into all the times I was a complete fucking mess. Now, starting with relationships, I have discussed some of this lightly on my episode in regards to navigating conflict, whether it's relationships, friendships. That episode is called I Used to Be So Bad at Fighting in Relationships. Bit of a mouthful, but I do discuss some of my toxic traits in there and how I have learnt to navigate through those. And you guys are well aware of my dating history now. I think I have been very brutally honest about my history with different people and all of the seasons that I have gone through within relationships. But today I want to dive a little bit deeper into my own bullshit and how I showed up in not the best ways. The first thing that came to mind when I was thinking about all of this was definitely going through my boyfriend's phones. Mind you, I only did this when I felt like I needed to or I had been pushed to. When things are giving you red flags and you're not getting clear answers, sometimes it does feel like I have needed to do that. The part that sucks about it is the trust shift that happens afterwards. And I swear to God, every single time I would go looking for something, I would find something. I would make a big deal out of something that probably didn't need to be because I already didn't trust the person. Granted, there was times when I found things that were black and white, not good things, shouldn't have been happening. And I think from there, you tend to read into every other little thing as if it means something more sinister than it actually is. And getting myself into a toxic loop of wanting to constantly check a phone is a really bad habit to get into when you're in a relationship. I don't know how you guys feel about it, whether it's something that you're comfortable with doing or not, or feel like that's a transparency standard for your relationship or not. I feel like at this point, I definitely would not be in a relationship if I was setting those standards again. I really want my partner to have that autonomy and have that trust and not feel like he needs to be monitored in that way. But previous behaviours when I was in other relationships, I definitely was keeping an eye on everything. And I think the worst had to be when I started getting obsessive over watching the activity that used to show up on Instagram. I swear to God, I caught my exes out doing so much shit with that. Liking, following different girls, half-naked posts, all kinds of things, comments. You could literally sit on that feed when you weren't with your boyfriend, partner, whoever, and you could watch what they were up to, especially if you would like try contacting them, but then you could see that they're active on Instagram and they're ignoring you. It's just like that type of stuff I would get so sucked into, especially with doing long distance, which I had done in 2 of my previous relationships. That was a frequent part of dating a musician. It kind of comes with the territory. So yeah, a toxic behavior of mine 100% was keeping fucking tabs on every single thing that they were doing. I really don't feel good about the level of aggression that I had when I hit a certain point in conflict as well. Something that I did touch on in that previous episode was the way I grew up watching my brothers and my dad lose it when they were elevated or angry. Growing up watching that kind of behavior sets the tone for how I was going to react when I was angry about things as well. And it did carry with me from being a teenager and then into my 20s. I didn't know that I had ADHD. I was unable to regulate once I saw red, once I got to a certain point. So popping off and losing my shit became something that was almost a knee-jerk reaction rather than being able to communicate calmly. Not that it's an excuse to be acting that way, but growing up with so much anger around my dad passing away and watching him be sick for the last 6 years that he was around, it made me a very angry girl. I was definitely the teenager that was punching holes in doors. I even punched a car and dented that, which was surprising that I was even able to do that, but I did. When I lost my license for hoon law, I was told by the judge that I need to get anger management. It has shown up frequently in my life. So naturally, without doing any sort of self-development, not wanting to go to a therapist, that shit carries on into your relationships. And that's 100% how I would show up when I was elevated. I'd get really angry. I would throw things around the house. I would scream, shout. I wasn't physically hitting any of my boyfriends, but I would break things in the room and, slam doors and just be really aggressive in that sense, kind of like just a bull in a china shop. That was my baseline reaction when I was overwhelmed. So that combination of undiagnosed ADHD, not being able to regulate my emotions, feeling very negative towards the world with my dad being sick, losing him at such a young age right before my eyes, and refusing to seek any sort of therapy to work through that or process it. Yeah, it made me an explosive teenager and it made me an explosive young adult. So not something that I feel good about. I've always been such a sensitive and loving person underneath that front and that aggression. But the rage that I always remember feeling when I was younger was always there. It was always there. Thank God I'm not like that now. But speaking of throwing things, I can laugh about this now, but at the time it was shocking and it was unintentional, but it was just like an outlandish, explosive reaction to being so pissed off. I had just come off of a huge bender with one of my exes, I'm not going to say who, and we got in an argument about him literally never buying me flowers. Oh my God, I'll never be with a man again who doesn't just do little surprises like that. Like, I love flowers. Not that my love language is receiving gifts, but you know, a girl likes to have some flowers here and there. Anyway, I was highlighting multiple times throughout this relationship that I would love to receive some flowers on Valentine's Day, whatever. We got in a big argument about it. I hadn't slept for days. He hadn't slept for days. I'm cooking in the kitchen. I don't want to be fucking cooking, but I am. He came into the kitchen, started arguing with me. Things were getting elevated. And out of nowhere, I just picked up the knife and threw it at the ground. A good kitchen knife, like a proper knife, not a small one, had some weight to it. Threw it at the ground when I was pissed off, angry, and it just missed his bare foot and dug into the wood floor. Very easily could have taken off his pinky toe, which would have been absolutely fucking tragic. Like, I don't ever want to do that to anybody. And we both just stopped and looked at each other and started laughing, but also were just so freaked out. One of the reasons why I wanted to get off drugs so badly was because my come downs were so intense. And the older that I am now and the more research I've done, the therapy that I'm doing, I've realized that the come downs were so intensely bad for me because it caused so much dysregulation with my ADHD. And not understanding that at the time, I just thought, you know, it kind of sent me insane because I always felt like I was super suicidal or just losing my mind whenever I was going through a really bad come down. Other people I found handled them better than myself, but for me, I genuinely did not feel like myself at all. So doing things like that was a real wake-up call. I am not even really that good with a hangover. However, I'm not going to go throwing knives at someone's foot. But yeah, no, that did happen. Not proud of it at all, but that was the closest I had ever gotten to physically attacking one of my exes. Obviously, there was that other relationship, the DV one, but we won't talk about that. The difference between myself now in my 30s compared to my 20s is like night and day, something that I'm very proud of because it took a lot of work to get to this point. And also understanding my diagnosis really helped too. But I just do not let myself get to that point anymore. I know how to go away and regulate, take a step back. There's just so many things that I can do prior to letting myself get to that point. Honestly, it takes me like a good 2 days to fully recover from that adrenaline crash out. My body does not deal well with getting that angry anymore. And it never did when I was younger either, but obviously I didn't know any difference. That was just how I dealt with things at the time. And believe me, I do not feel good talking about any of this. It's something that I feel not ashamed of, but a bit embarrassing. People would never view me that way. And I think especially with influencers, like anybody that has any type of following, you don't expect them to be dysregulated messes behind closed doors. And as much as I'm so open to discussing this type of thing and being authentic and very transparent with you all, there's still a little part of me when I talk about the level of aggression I had when I was younger that just feels really sad about it because I just didn't know any different at the time. And it felt like such a way of being able to protect myself. I was known by people when I was growing up for being fucking hot-headed. I didn't love confrontation, but I was more than willing to go there. And the other thing, now I think about it, has to be the way that I used to have an answer for everything. I still do, I have to admit. Even if I just say it in my head, I have an answer for every single thing. And it's not easy to win an argument with me either, which is not how you should navigate through relationships anyway. Relationships shouldn't be about you versus them. It should always be about you versus the problem. And when you change your perspective on conflict when you're in a relationship or a friendship to that, it completely changes everything. But back when I was younger, oh my God, it was all about me versus them. Who's going to win the argument? How am I going to catch them out for being liars? Finding it so hard to trust men made that very fierce within me as well. I would remember every single detail from any single thing and bring it up years later as ammunition in an argument. Very, very toxic behavior, not something that I'm proud of, but I think a lot of you would be able to relate with me when I say that. And it's crazy because if you remember, I was posting as if my relationships were hunky-dory, really healthy. I was super happy, but really it was a whole load of bullshit. You guys know the level of lying that I did within my career online, whether it was lying about my relationship being really good, lying about being happy when I was severely depressed and became very suicidal again, which was the second season in my life that I felt that way, living in the US. Also editing my body, making myself skinnier than I was and viewing my body in a really disordered way. So there was so much toxic behavior that I was presenting with in my 20s. I'm a good person, but good people have their messiness as well. I think people forget that. And it is really hard to admit, especially on the internet. I'm opening myself up to judgment completely by telling you guys about this stuff. But at the end of the day, can you really be that judgmental of someone that's willing to be honest about their own shit? You take away people's ammunition from being able to hurt you when you own your own truth, and especially when you own your own bullshit. Speaking of owning my own bullshit, oh my God, this is tragic. And it just goes to show how addictive vaping actually is. Any of you that listen to my vaping episode will know the level of addiction I had for vaping. I was a smoker before that. I got into vaping and now I am fully clean from vapes. However, I like the cheeky cig here and there, still do that. When I was in my previous relationship, I was smoking the vape heavily. I was vaping 24/7. And I also didn't know why I was constantly anxious. So totally unaware of my ADHD and severely anxious from vaping. What an amazing mix for my health. And one evening I was in LA and I'm hunting for my vape. Couldn't find it anywhere. I start getting angry. The temperature is rising on the thermometer, getting close to losing my shit. Pacing around the apartment, looking around, lifting things, starting to slam things down, getting more and more elevated. I needed my fucking hit. It sounds so cracky when I say it, but it's the truth. You're like literally itching inside for that nicotine. Hate admitting it, but it's so true. Anyone that's lived it will understand. So I'm hunting for the vape and I can't find it. But then it hits me. My ex hated me vaping and wanted me to quit. He kept making subtle comments about it, kind of, starting to nag me about it. And fair enough, you don't want to see your partner smoking, like whatever, but I wasn't ready to fucking quit. So I wasn't quitting for anybody, let alone him, right? But when I thought about that at the time, I immediately started blaming him, kicking off, being like, you wanted me to quit, you must have hit it, I can't find it anywhere, where the fuck is my vape? Fully attacking him, saying he's the one that hit it. I'm going off about it because I can't go and buy a new one. It was too late at night. Anyway, losing it, we start getting in a fight. I'm still pacing around, checking every single thing, even the fucking kitchen bin. Going back to the bedroom, flipping off the covers, and then I suddenly see this little shimmering silver thing, because it was a jewel back then, sticking out of one of my sneakers. So this must have fallen off the bed into my sneaker, basically. I decided to pretend like nothing had happened. I grabbed the vape, walked into the bathroom and started smoking it there. Whilst this argument was happening, I was also texting Michael being like, oh, he stole my vape. I know he has. I can't find it anywhere, going off about it even in text messages. And by the time I found it, I was in the bathroom smoking it secretly and sending Michael some snaps of it. So we were laughing about it because I'm a fucking idiot, but he was also a full-time vapor then as well. So that is the type of toxic shit that I would do, but too fucking proud at the time to admit that I was the one that lost my own vape and it was nothing to do with my ex. Hopefully none of you are judging me too hard for that, but I feel like so many of you that used to vape would be able to relate to that story. You know, when you just can't find something and then you immediately start lashing out. Well, that was me. Going into my career as a content creator, influencer, whatever you want to call it, I can definitely say that I have been the toxic one at times, specifically when it comes to feeling competitive with other creators. And influencers won't talk about this, okay? If anything, I've seen most influencers say that everyone's really nice in the industry and there's not that many issues, but that couldn't be further from the truth from my experience and from a lot of other people that I know as well. It is very competitive in this country, and a lot of you will know that there is tall poppy syndrome to the max here as well, specifically in Australia. It doesn't matter what career you're in, tall poppy syndrome lives and breathes breathes very strongly within this society. It's very different to Europe and it's very different to the US. To be honest, I actually preferred it in the US in this regard because content creators, influencers were not seen as celebrities. They were seen as, influencers and content creators. So those people weren't so on their high horse like they are in this country. I feel like people in Australia see influencers as celebrities here because we have nothing else to really compare it to. It makes me cringe when anybody says that any of us influencers are famous because to me, a celebrity is very different. When I was in America, there was real celebrities around. Catch me dead before I ever consider myself famous. Seriously, I'm not a household name, and most content creators, influencers are also not household names. Let's just put that as fact. When it comes to being competitive, it stems down to mostly being blatantly copied with things. I feel like when you're a creative and you do certain things and then somebody else takes your own work and makes it as if it was their own, there's nothing that's really more insulting than that, especially when you're not given any credit. And this has happened multiple times for me, and I know it has with so many other creators as well. For myself, being copied enrages me. Like, it's something that I find so fucking triggering. Not that I like to admit it, but in the past, I have spent a lot of my time and energy wasted on feeling very negative feelings towards some other creators that I have found doing those type of things towards me. And the thing that I have found the most draining about this industry, more back when I was in my 20s, because it feels like I've stepped into the industry from a different perspective this time. But when I was younger, I had experienced on multiple occasions having this weird silent beef with other creators and then having them be so nice to my face at events. It's a game that I don't like playing. If you don't like me, then just act like you don't fucking like me. And that means that we both get to be honest about not liking each other. That's how I have always felt. But when it comes to face-to-face interactions at events, influencer circles, creator circles, nobody acts that way. Everybody is very fakey, nicey, has a good time, parties together, and then it's back a few weeks later to being basically cunts with each other online. One thing I found myself doing in this career was throwing subliminal messages over captions, stories, that type of shit. You'll see influencers doing it all the time. You'll see people that aren't influencers doing it all the time. The nasty little digs here and there in the comments, that type of shit happens all the time. Sometimes you guys will pick up on it and then other times you won't because you don't know what's going on behind closed doors with other creators. But when you're in that circle and you know who's got beef with who, and then you see them doing certain things, that shit lives very, very true to this day. And I guess it does with any circles of friends online. People get really petty with that type of stuff. I definitely indulged in that kind of what I would say low vibrational behavior within my career. But most people will never admit that. That's the thing. Like, people don't ever want to admit their bullshit. But like, come on, be so fucking for real. I think most of us have done that shit. It's obviously embarrassing to admit that, and I've definitely done it more than once. Meanwhile, the other people that have done that type of thing would never admit it. Like, I would be so surprised to see many influencers, creators come online and talk about what they've done in the past, shady, shitty, toxic behavior, unless they were getting cancelled. Seriously, they're not going to take accountability for things unless they're getting pushed to do it. Otherwise, it's always the picture perfect look. This is why I wanted to embrace my own messiness, because when does anyone ever talk about it? Do you know what I mean? It's kind of funny when people are like, oh, I never talked shit about this person. Bitch, yes, you did. Most people have engaged in talking shit about someone. Like, please, fucking please. Let's not go pretending that just because we're influencers that we haven't gone talking shit about other people, because I 100% have. Will put my hand up, totally engaged in that shit. And it wasn't good for me. Like, it really wasn't good for my mental health. Focusing on other people as well. Honestly, I put it down to me being so depressed at the time too. Like, I was so negative, so depressed. And since being so much happier now, more at peace, I can't really imagine spending my time doing that. Sometimes I look back at my old self and I don't really recognize her because she was so angry compared to who I am now. Sometimes all of us talk shit from time to time. It is called being human, but it's not letting yourself get stuck into that behavior long term, and being careful about the words that you say out loud as well, because it kind of voices things into existence. So I am very cautious about how I speak about things now that I'm older. Maybe it's because I'm in my 30s. I don't know. But granted, there's a lot of people that are older even than me, and they carry on like children. So it's very much down to personal development and growth, I think. One thing that I know now about anyone that takes swipes at you is that if someone is doing better than you, they won't be engaging in that type of behavior. So to take swipes at somebody online, whether it's a subliminal message, passive aggressive, whatever it is, they're not doing better than you if they're doing that type of thing. So that's something that you need to remember. If you have somebody that gives you shit online and you know it's directed at you, whether it's naming you or not, and you feel it in your gut that it's about you, just remember that they cannot be in a better place than you mentally or success-wise if they are engaging in that type of behavior. Also, a little side note while I think about it, I am wearing Stacks in today's episode. A lot of you who have followed me will know how much I love Stacks and how long I've been working with them. So I asked them for a special discount code for all my listeners. You can use the code emotional content for 20% off any of your orders. And to be totally transparent, I do earn commission off of that. So if you did want to get yourself any Stacks at any time of the year, you can use that code. I wasn't sure whether I wanted to admit this on the podcast or not. If you've listened to the podcast, you will know that I went through a lot of bullying when I was younger. And I think this stems from there. When I was in America and I was hanging out with, obviously, that crew, the Chainsmokers crew, and I was around a lot of celebrities, living in America, had my working visa, it gave me what I would say a false sense of power and status. Not something that I want to admit at all, but it was the way that other creators and other people would show up when it came to meeting me that I think created that, because so many people in this industry naturally want to network, or, you know, they kind of see that there could be some opportunity there, especially if they want to get into singing or something to do with the music industry. They can get almost a little bit too friendly with your boyfriend. That's all I'm going to say on that. Or you can just kind of tell the way they show up with you is a little bit false. That's something that I experienced a lot. However, it did mean that people were immediately nicer with me and didn't want to, I don't know, potentially be an asshole. I felt the difference with that big time once I was over in America. So I think I judged people a little bit more harshly back then as well. And I always kind of felt like people weren't being as authentic as normal. Basically, I was always wondering what people's real intentions were. So it did make me judge people more harshly. And the false sense of power was a bit of a protective layer. One thing that I didn't love about being around the people I was all the time was how much materialism I was surrounded by and how it made me more materialistic. When you are around super wealthy people, rich people, famous people regularly, like most weekends, your perception changes. It definitely changes. I am somebody that is not easily swayed by things. I stay very true to myself. And as much as I did and always have, that shit rubbed off on me. Most of the conversation was about money with my ex. Most of the conversation was about career, and it didn't really venture too far from those things. Unfortunately, life got very materialistic over there and it rubbed off on me. And one of the things that was so ridiculous, absolutely fucking outlandish in my thought process, was the fact that I didn't bother getting a car in America unless it was a G-Wagon. Sorry? Like, I genuinely was like, no, I'm just going to wait to get a car and use Uber until I get a G-Wagon. Granted, they are cheaper over there, but you also need to be earning US dollars. And it's also a fucking expensive car. I was around people that were supportive of that decision. Like, yeah, just wait. You might as well wait. Like, what? Guys, I literally drive around in a fucking Jimny. I mean, it's like a mini G-Wagon. I do love the boxiness of it, but fuck me. What was I thinking? The materialism made me lose myself a little there, I have to admit. God, it feels so weird talking about this stuff because it just isn't something people discuss unless they're being forced to. I'm not in some kind of drama. I'm not trying to avoid getting cancelled. Honestly, Anna Paul could never. That's rude, but like, I genuinely am taking more accountability than she ever could, and she actually fucking needed to. So it's definitely not wrong. When it comes to friendships, I have briefly touched on how I've shown up in friendships in a toxic way before. I think I discussed it not long ago in one of the episodes where I have been very guilty of trauma dumping on my friends and my loved ones. Anyone that's been willing to listen to me in the past, in my 20s, would hear about all of it. And it wasn't until I was done that I would ask how they are, or I'd quickly ask how they're going. And then when they ask me, completely dump onto them. So that's something that makes me cringe. I've also been guilty of ghosting people in the past because I had a lack of boundaries when I was younger and I didn't learn how to establish healthy boundaries. I was prone to letting things push me so much in a friendship to breaking point where I would then cut them off and I'd be done with the friendship. So because I didn't know how to establish boundaries and basically talk things through that were bothering me in order to preserve said friendship, I would then get to a breaking point and just cut them off, which is really unhealthy and essentially ghosting a person without really giving them much warning. So when it happens, they're like in shock as to why I'm doing that, because I haven't voiced all the other times leading up to that where I've been hurt or upset, and not speaking up almost put me in a bit of a people-pleasing role in some friendships. By not speaking up sooner, I don't get to preserve the friendship, and that's something that I 100% have been guilty of. I spoke about the time that I did that with Imogen Anthony back in December when I did my first Q&A, Ask Me Anything, and I did touch on that then. Something that I do regret to this day. It just wasn't fair doing that. I actually watched Imogen on Big Brother and I thought, wow, she has grown so fucking much. And she's been through a lot, especially when it came to dating Kyle Sandilands, who I obviously knew as well because they were both together at the time when we were friends. And I really do find that people who have had it tough or gone through a lot of shit end up being the best people. I don't know what you guys think of that. Obviously, hurt people tend to hurt people, and I don't think that's an excuse, especially with my own behaviours. Like, yes, I've had ADHD and there's been a lot of contributing factors to my behaviour, but it's never an excuse, especially for the times that I've gotten really angry and elevated. Yes, there's a lot of contributing factors as to why, but the behaviour is not excusable. I just want everyone to know that. The way that I've shown up with my toxicity is not excusable. Ghosting people when I had close friendships with them is not excusable behaviour, but it's things that I've learned from over time. Speaking on friendships, there was another public friendship that I had with another DJ. A lot of you will know her as DJ Tiger Lily, but I knew her as Dara. Dara and I got really close when I was dating that DJ in Sydney. We had a good friendship. Anytime that we caught up, we had a blast. She was super supportive of me becoming a DJ because I told her I wanted to. And we continued to be friends after I left that relationship with that guy as well. So I met her through him, but she didn't like pick sides or anything. So Dara was always very lovely. But when we were friends, I think we were both, again, in a very chaotic period of our lives. We were both really young and figuring ourselves out for sure. Once I had settled over in Brisbane and I left that guy I was with, Dara ended up reaching out to me with her concerns about how I was basically living my life at the time. It was coming forward with concern, but also felt really judgmental to me. She was concerned about the amount of injectables that I was having and also my weight. At the time, granted, I was making myself look like very, very thin with Facetune. I think she was aware that I was using Facetune, but like overusing it. So I was like lying and being like, I'm not face tuning, like that's my body, that's how skinny I am. And then she was like kind of concerned about my weight. So it was more to do with her being concerned about how much I was editing myself, how I was showing up online. I can see it very clearly now for what it was. She was somebody who was being concerned about the way I was showing up. And like young me back then, I didn't want to be fucking told what to do. I felt heavily judged by her, but when I look at it deeper, she was genuinely just trying to highlight that I was beautiful the way that I was and I didn't need to be doing all that stuff. So at the time, I took it really badly. You guys know I was super insecure about myself and I felt like I needed to be doing those things. I wasn't one of those girls that was like rocking the natural look. I didn't feel like I was naturally beautiful. So to basically be told that by a friend, even though it was delivered nicely, it was very offensive to me. Like, I found it very offensive and I took nothing but offense, which is sad to look back on. Whether she delivered it well or not, she was right in what she was saying. Even though I can do whatever I want with my own body, she was reaching out like a concerned friend, basically. After that, Dara ended up going off to Europe and she was away for quite some time. I think it was a couple of months, and basically completely ghosted me. We did not speak the entire time. And yeah, that made me quite upset. I felt like I had been personally attacked for how I was living my life. This is just my mindset. That's not actual fact, but I felt like I had been fully attacked for how I was living my life. And then she had just ghosted me, which I wasn't used to anybody ghosting me. I hadn't actually been ghosted. So I got a taste of my own medicine in that situation, and I didn't fucking like it, let me tell you. A few months later after that, Dara reached out and tried to smooth things over. But at that point, I was not interested. She had hurt me and I was not reopening the door. Back then, it was very much like, if you walk out on me and, you ghost me, then you're fucking done, in my opinion. I just cut you off back as well. Even though she had taken full accountability for everything, it was a perfect opportunity for us to sort things out, and I just refused. I closed the door on that. I was polite back, but I did not reopen that door. And it's a shame because I was so in my pride, I was so filled with ego and so filled with resentment and bitterness that I wasn't willing to reconcile. The way that I was perceiving what was originally said to me was seen through a lens of hurt and judgment, and I couldn't see out of that. And I spent a long time feeling really resentful towards her after that. I felt very judged by her, but at the end of the day, there wasn't judgment coming from her. It was actually concern. And it's amazing how clearly I can see that now compared to how I saw it back then. Maybe by bringing this up and telling you guys, it will make you potentially look at situations that you've seen things through maybe a clouded lens like myself. Going through all of the growth that I have, looking back at situations like this, I'm just like, oh man, that was so unnecessary. And yes, this happens as you get older. It does. You start to realize your own behaviors and things where you have fucked up. But if you can look at it now when you're younger and really start embracing your own bullshit rather than running with the resentment and letting things drag on for longer than they should have, it will serve you so much better in the long run rather than carrying on like that. I spent years in a victim mindset. I felt like people were attacking me when maybe they weren't, but I was always on the defense. And walking through life in a victim mindset after what had happened with Dad and feeling so negative towards the world and the experiences that I was going through made things really cloudy and dark when they probably didn't need to be. I've told you guys before that I don't like to live in regret. It's completely wasted energy. But you know what? It's nice to go back and look on my old behaviors and how I didn't show up well. It's good to get really honest with myself about my own fuck ups and reflect back on how much I have grown as a person now. If you're stuck in a really negative mindset and you are doing the things right now that I used to do, just know that there is opportunity for growth every time you fuck up. You can learn from it. You can grow from it. You can show up differently. Realizing that I was in a victim mindset for so long was the biggest ego death for me. When you're in a victim mindset, you are leaving yourself susceptible to every situation, every person being able to burn you. It leads you to crashing out all the time because you think that everybody is against you and life is happening to you rather than for you. It makes things so much darker than they need to be. And when you are acting like a victim, you're completely taking your power away. You're leaving yourself in a weak position by doing that. If you get to a point where you're just sick of your own bullshit and you want to live a better life, that is the best time to receive this type of information. But if somebody told me that I was being a victim and I needed to fucking snap out of it, I would have taken such offense. But that is where I was. That is why I showed up the way I did. And I am so fucking proud of myself for getting to this point where I no longer show up like that anymore. Oh my gosh, admitting all of this on the podcast is actually a bit scary. This feels like I'm opening myself up to some pretty hefty judgment, but I really hope that this podcast can help you get honest with yourself about how you have shown up for things in the past, with your toxicity, with your messiness, with the chaos. It is all part of the human experience, and the only way that we truly find love for ourselves is by embracing all of the sides we have. Not just the good and the bright and the fun, but the dark, messy, and chaotic parts too. Remember that we are all only human, and you deserve to love yourself in your messiest moments as well. Well, I don't know how I feel about recording this episode, but we're going to be putting it out anyway, and I hope that you guys were able to get something beneficial from it, whether it's just understanding that influencers are not as perfect as they show up online, or if this could just give you some comfort in knowing that you are not alone and this is completely relatable for you. I love you all so much. Have an incredible week, and I will see you in next week's episode. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please give it a share. You never know who might need a little emotional content in their life. For daily feel-good posts, follow @_emotional content on Instagram and TikTok. And don't forget to hit that follow button so you're notified every time a new episode drops. Your support means the absolute world to me.